Hey, welcome to the Speak University's Easy Podcast Blueprint. I am super excited to go over this one with you. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because make sure this is working. Yep. Because building a podcast, I really think you should focus more on the building the podcast and getting the structure together before you dabble into marketing. But it is important. Definitely, it's definitely one of the most important pieces. But it's not something that I want you to spend an exorbitant amount of time on in the beginning. You definitely have to make sure that everything that you've done up to this point, the things that we've talked about as far as building your purpose, aligning your purpose with that podcast, that's you taking that Ikigai worksheet. You've done all of the things. Your podcast is almost formed, and you're at this point, right? So unless you've gone through those modules, you've taken those serious, go back and do them. But if you have, then you're in the right place. This worksheet is going to guide you through the process of creating a marketing plan for your new podcast. I want you to fill in the blanks. You're going to complete each section to ensure a successful marketing plan for your new podcast. You're going to provide, so to start off with this, you're going to provide basic information about your podcast. That's including its name, its description, its target audience, and its unique selling proposition. And what this is your name of the podcast. If we were going, let's say if I was going to turn this into a podcast, I would call it the Easy Podcast Blueprint. And my description would be where I am putting together a podcast where I can tell people show people the importance and tell them how to build a podcast, the importance of a podcast, and show them how to build it. And also my target audience would be folks like yourself, amazing people that have an amazing idea. Maybe they have a product, maybe they have a service, but they're using their story to get their brand out there. They're using their podcast to build a platform, right? And unique selling proposition. That's what makes you unique. There's a whole drill on this, but I don't want you to get into the weeds on this, but what makes your podcast unique? I would say with the way that I would do this podcast, I would have people come on and I would build their podcast with them. I would take questions and I would take answers. And then when it's just me, I would talk about different processes and growing the podcast. But what would be unique about this is you would see a podcast being built in real time. I think that would be so incredible, because they'll show you the end product, but they won't show you the bumps and the bruises. So that's what I would do if I was going to create a podcast based off of this course. So you're going to begin by filling out the details about your podcast in the provided spaces below. I want you to clearly define what makes your podcast unique and who your target audience is. So again, you're writing that there. If you did the exercise above, this is easy, right? So you're just writing it in here, your target audience, right? Made you think about it. Now you're actually doing it, writing in that unique selling point. What's going to set your podcast apart? So I'm just going to keep cruising on. For marketing goals, you're going to set clear and measurable goals for your podcast and marketing efforts. Instructions, you're going to define achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals for podcast marketing. I want you to really consider what you want to achieve in terms of your audience, growth, engagement, and brand awareness. Because once you got this podcast built, those are going to be the things that you're going to be thinking about. Those are going to be the things where you're going to be reaching out to me. Hey, Tony, how do I do this? How do I continue to grow my audience? How can I get them to engage with me? And how can I get people that never heard of me so that they can learn about me, right? So that's what I created this as an example. You're going to do yours below. You're going to have an opportunity to do your own. But if this was me doing it, if I'm going to be very specific, I'm going to build an audience of beginner and growth stage podcasters who are interested in launching or refining their shows using the Easy Podcast Blueprint podcast, right? And then something that'd be measurable for me, I think in the beginning, for you to grow to 1,000 downloads and 200 email opt-ins from podcast listeners in the first 90 days, right? I don't think that that's hard at all. I know that 200 people, you can have access to 200 people. So that's what I would be trying to do. I would be trying to get that 1,000 downloads immediately in the first 90 days, being very fast, very deliberate about it. Then achievable. What can make this achievable? With consistent weekly episodes, clear call to actions at the end. That's me telling my friends to subscribe to my podcast, to share my podcast, to engage with me. And also what I would be doing is repurposing that content on social media. I think this is within reach. That's what would make that achievable, right? So in your head, you should be thinking, what would make my goal achievable? So take notes because you're going to do yours down below. But this is just an example of some things that I would be thinking about when it comes to mine. This goal, how is it relevant? This goal directly supports the core business, selling the Easy Podcast Blueprint course, because that's what I would be doing. I would be having this course available, and also growing the Speak University community. That's why it's relevant, because that's some things that I want to do. I want to make more people aware of the Easy Podcast Blueprint course, and also grow my community with Speak University. That is what the Easy Podcast Blueprint is kind of held under, is a Speak University. So time bound, make this within 90 days of the podcast. If you don't have something to measure whatever marketing goal or whatever thing it is that you're doing that's in life, if you don't have some sort of goal, it's not going to be done in a time that I believe that would be satisfactory for you. Because how many know of the people that, they don't have a goal when it comes to building their fence? They're just going to take their time. And some folks just come by 30 years later. You still ain't finished that fence? Nope. It'll get done one day. Next thing you know, one day never comes, and you're going to that person's funeral and that fence still has not been erected. So unless you want the goal to come to fruition until after you have been long and gone and away from here, set some sort of goal when it comes to time. So, okay, here's another example. If I was going to do another example for goal 2, it would be increase engagement and convert listeners into leads. So what I would do is I would get very specific here, and that's get podcast listeners to engage with the show and take the next step. That is downloading the checklist and for them to join the community or book a strategy call with me. So what I would do in my podcast is I would have a checklist. I would probably have the 12 steps that you would need to create a podcast. I would have that in there. And then I would also have them engage with me to book a strategy call for their podcast, right? And that's something that you can do with yours. Measurable. Drive a list, 100 new checklist downloads, and 20 book calls or course sign up from the podcast QTA. So I would want 100 new checklist downloads. That's the downloads that I would have in the podcast. I would want 100 people to download that, and I would want to have 20 book calls or course sign up. And of course, if you get 20 book calls, you'll probably get 5 or 6 people that'll sign up for the course. So why is this achievable? Because if I'm going to have a clear call to action in every episode and episode notes, so that not only they're hearing me say it, they're seeing me say it, they could read me giving them the information and giving them reminders across social media that will guide them towards me without feeling extra salesy. So I'm just mentioning it to them. I'm just reminding them of this service that I have. How is it relevant? This turns the podcast into a lead engine for the Easy Podcast Blueprint and coaching offers. Time bound. reach these within the next 60 days of launching a podcast. I think that that is very doable, especially doable for you. This is something that I would love for you to be working on. All these things that I'm talking about, grab them. These are definitely things that I did to make my podcast get to where it's at. So for let's see how much time we got here. Okay, so before you go to this part where you're doing yours, maybe rewind back, right? Download this and write it down, or maybe take some notes. I don't know how you're doing it, whichever works for you. Start thinking about you want your goals to be, go back, watch mine's, and then write them in down here. Boom, boom. Check them off as you do them, right? And take your time with that. Have we been going? Okay, 11 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this. I'm going to take a break, and I want you to go back and really think about this. And then the second part of this will be the audience analysis. That's what we'll go through, and we'll talk about the audience for your podcast. I'll be back. All right, we are back with the second part of your marketing plan for your podcast. Again, this isn't one of those marketing plans that you pay millions of dollars for, and it's just like super intricate and so freaking complicated that you don't even understand. This is something that's going to get your podcast up and going. This is something that's going to help you develop a plan so that you could not only use now, you could use it while you're growing, and you could use it once you hit some of those targets that we identified in your SMART goals. Like it's ongoing when it comes to your marketing plan with your podcast. So now what we're going to do is we're going to analyze your target audience, demographics, interests. We're going to look at their pain points, which that's a big one, the pain points, and content consumption habits. What we're going to do is we're going to research and describe your target audience in detail. We're going to consider demographics such as age, gender, location, interest, identify their pain points and preferences when it comes to consuming content. I keep highlighting pain points because that's one of the things that it just bothers me when people are marketing their podcast. You'll hear them say, and you'll hear me freaking talk about this a lot, where people will say, oh, subscribe to my new podcast, or there's a new podcast episode or a new podcast lesson. Nobody cares about that, but maybe your mom or your dad or somebody that really loves you, they'll subscribe to your podcast, or they'll listen to a podcast episode because they care about you, right? But if you really want to make an impact, you really want to draw other people in that is not in your current sphere, that's not in your house, that's not in your family, which I'm pretty sure you do if you're creating a podcast. You want to talk about some pain points. So if I was going to do a podcast, let's say if I'm going to do a podcast, a big topic has been about anxiety lately, something that I've noticed in my life, right? Something that I've overcame or overcoming, and I'm seeing other people do it too. So if I was going to come out with my next podcast episode, I would say, hey, this is one thing that I notice that helps me cure all anxiety on the spot. Or do you have anxiety right now? You might want to listen to this podcast episode because I'm going deep into meditation, right? That's what's going to get the people to tune in, not because you got a new podcast. Nobody freaking cares. Okay. So what I want you to do is take some time to think about this. I might be going a little bit fast, but what I want you to do is I want you to go slow. So pause and look at this really quick. I want you to look at your demographics. That's your age range. That's the gender of the people that are going to be listening to the show. If it's relevant, that's the locations. If you have a podcast where you're talking about local, current, worldwide events, that's something that you could talk about. Profession, or life stage. So age range, I'll tell you, if I'm talking about podcasting and I'm making a podcast like we talked about before, making a podcast out of the easy podcast blueprint, I'm gonna get folks. I'm thinking, for me, for my target area, I'm thinking folks that are like 30 and up, right? My ideal, I would say, in that 40ish range, because I've learned that those are the folks that are like, ooh, I would think it's cool to do a podcast, right? I have a lot of information to share on the podcast. I'm a subject matter expert. I'd love to freaking stop traveling so much and really sit down and be able to talk to a camera and do that, right? I'm noticing the folks that are doing that, they're, mid 30s all the way up until freaking 70s and even 80s. I got some clients that are freaking 75 years old that are starting podcasts. How freaking cool is that? So that's what I would put there. I would put their age, gender. There's some podcasts that specifically are for men. There's some that are specifically for women. There's some that are specifically that I know right now that are for people in the trans community. Like, is it relevant? It doesn't necessarily have to be relevant. My podcast, I have not nailed this down to where it's men, women, other than they. I just haven't did that. I haven't thought about it actually, because it's not necessarily for my show, but it might be for yours. Locations, something to think about. If you have a local presence, or you want to have a local podcast, I'm here in Olympia, Washington. I do know a couple of people that have podcasts that are local. They cover local events. That's cool. If profession or life stage, just like I said, there's people that are in their 80s that are creating podcasts. There's people that are doctors, that are lawyers. I'm getting a big influx of lawyers that are creating podcasts. So what profession? I definitely would nail this one down, because you want to call the people that you want to come. So if you're a plumber and you're listening to this, you should be talking to plumbers and you should be talking about plumber stuff. So think about that. You don't want to have a podcast that's talking about this. Oh, I'm talking to every age group. I'm freaking talking to every gender. That's cool. I'm talking to everybody in every location. That's cool. I'm talking to every profession. That's cool, right? It's not cool. It's not cool at all. It's definitely, if you do that, you're setting yourself up to failure. You're setting yourself up with some metrics that don't really make sense. So, interests and passions, what are they into? The people that I'm marketing for, not just if I was to start a podcast but just for this program. If you're looking at this, you want to use your voice, right? If I got this nailed, I can just fortune tell here right quick. You want to use your voice. You want to use your voice for good. You have different insights into whatever profession it is that you have. You stay silent for so long and you're very excited about starting your podcast. Did I get that right? What do you care about? What do they care about the most right now? For me, I would say those people, if you're watching this, you care about using your voice, you care about building your stage. Now you need to think about the people that you're going to reach out to. What do they care about the most right now? If you're let's say you're in the funeral industries, I would say there's somebody that I just met, I really care about. She's an amazing person. I know that she's watching it, right? So she's in the funeral industry. She's one of the most brightest people that I've ever met. I see her post, I smile. I talk to her on the phone, I smile. I see her text, I smile. She's very uplifting, which I think that industry could do some good. But if we're talking about her podcast, what do they care about right now? They care about being comforted. They care about having peace, right? So that's something you can think about when it comes to what you're looking for. Pain points. What keeps them stuck? What are they struggling with? What can your podcast help them with? If I was going to create a podcast with the Easy Podcast Blueprint, one thing that I would be talking about is you're probably stuck thinking, Oh, what do I talk about? What's my purpose with podcasting? Will people even listen to the podcast? What technical hurdles do I have to overcome? These are all the things that you're probably like, oh yeah, that's me. Exactly. Right. Because I did my homework, I did my research, and I'm marketing to the right people. What do they wish someone would explain clearly or fix? One thing that I would do is explain clearly or fix is the fact that you don't have to know all the technical babble when it comes to podcasting. When I first got into podcasting, I was definitely afraid. I reached out to a popular podcast group and I wanted them to help me, and they were just a little bit too busy. They wanted me to get on their network. And I remember being so frustrated because they wouldn't, it was like they wasn't acting fast enough. And I was just looking at all these different YouTube videos. I was very stuck. And I just wish that somebody would have helped me. Somebody would help me explain this because it was just going to be so hard. But then I figured out that it's not as hard as I was making it. That's what I wish somebody would have helped me with, right? And if I can help you with that, and if I can help you understand that podcasting isn't that hard, that all you got to do is continue to step up. All you got to do is create those episodes, go to your podcast hosting spot, wherever it is that you choose. Remember, I talk about podcast.co quite a bit. You go to podcast.co or anyone that you want to go to, you create the login, you get your microphone and you start talking. That is how simple it is, right? That is how simple it is. You start talking and you don't stop talking. It's that simple. When we make it hard, that's when we fail. Okay. So think about with your situation. What do they wish someone would help them clearly fix? These are the people that we've been talking about right here, our demographic. Content habits, where they hang out online, the Instagram, is it LinkedIn, is it YouTube, or etc. Is it Facebook? I've gotten some customers off of all of these sites. Instagram is probably the least because I don't typically hang out on LinkedIn, and my crowd typically isn't on LinkedIn. I've noticed that, not LinkedIn, but Instagram. My crowd is on LinkedIn, but on Instagram, I noticed it could be a younger demographic. We're talking about like my kids' age. They have an Instagram and stuff like that. And I do know that there are brands like Nike, Reebok, and all these other different type of food companies. They have Instagrams, and I think that that's cool. But for you, you need to be thinking about where your customer's going to hang out. If it's LinkedIn, that's cool. If it's YouTube, that's cool. But where are they getting their information from? For me, it's LinkedIn. I know a lot of subject matter experts that are on LinkedIn trying to figure out how they can make content just like everybody else. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of them, they're like, oh, I could start a YouTube channel too. So I would say LinkedIn or YouTube, that's where they hang out at. So that's where you want to create your content so that you can attract them. How they usually learn or get inspired. One thing I noticed that's really cool is a lot of my friends, when we're talking about stuff, we're not necessarily sharing reels from Facebook or Instagram. They're not sending me reels or check this out. My wife will send me that stuff. We'll go back and forth. We consume content, but not like learning stuff from there. I pick up some garden stuff or whatever, but that's kind of where it stops. Blogs, I'll be honest with you, I do not read blogs. I have my own newsletter on LinkedIn that I would say is kind of like a blog, but that's not where I'm going to get inspired. Podcasts, now that's where we're talking. Whenever I'm talking to somebody, it always comes up. Oh, what podcast do you listen to? Or I heard you mention something about anxiety. You should check out this podcast. Or I heard you went through a depression. You should check out this podcast. So where are your people learning? Where are your people getting inspired? Right. So think about that. That's the type of content that you're going to be making. So write that down there. What type of podcasts, blogs, or reels are they already listening to? The people that I believe that would listen to the Easy Podcast Blueprint, if I turn it to a podcast, they're listening to Joe Rogan. They're doing some sort of market study on podcasts, or they're in a specific niche and they're listening to that podcast. So I would find out what podcasts that those folks are listening to. What key persons of influence are they following? If you're a person that you talk about leadership a lot, chances are you're going to be thinking about, maybe John Maxwell, what type of content, you're going to be learning about his podcast. If you're into building stuff, you would follow these, maybe DIY builder type things or whatever it is that you're into, right? If you're in real estate, I think Tim Ferriss, that's a podcast that you would be listening to. What are they listening to? Okay. And then the final question when we're talking about the demographics is, what transformation does your audience want? And how can your podcast help them get it? What transformation? So I'm hoping that by you listening to me right now and a podcast, if I had it, the transformation would be that not only can I build a successful podcast, but I can utilize my voice in an effective manner to inspire the masses. That's what I want you to do. So you think about what transformation you want your audience to do and write that down. Okay, we got some more. We're going to talk about a competitive analysis. You're going to research and analyze your competitors' podcasting or content strategy to get clarity on how you can stand out. I firmly believe that if there's somebody out there doing it, why not look and see what they're doing? Why not compare what they're doing to what you possibly can do to take things up a notch? It's not stealing from them. It's identifying your competitor. You can't tell me that Nike don't go shopping at, the executives at Nike don't go shopping at, Reebok to see what they're doing, or whoever is competing with them these days. You can't tell me that it doesn't happen. It does happen. You can't tell me that Pepsi's not still checking out Coke or any of these other brands. You cannot tell me that doesn't happen, because it does happen. So what I want you to do is I want you to identify a few other podcasters, creators, or businesses that serve the same audience you do. Take a close look at how they market themselves. What are they doing well? Where are they falling short? And what opportunities you can take advantage of? Then I want you to fill out the SWOT analysis below to help shape your own marketing strategy. So again, you're going to take this and you're going to make this your own. So what I would do is, use this as an asset, and you're going to talk about one key competitor, and you can keep repeating this for as long as you want to. Take out a scrap sheet of paper. If you printed this out, write it on the back if you need to, but right here, strengths, what are they really doing well? What makes them attractive to your audience? You're going to write that strength down. With the weakness, where are they falling short? What complaints do people have? And if you want to know what complaints they have, all you got to do is look at the reviews, look at what they're saying, right? What gaps or missed opportunities do you notice in their content or strategy could fill in? It's just like, oh, I really wish that they would talk about this more, or I really wish there wasn't so many ahs and ums in their stuff, or I really wish their introduction wasn't 5 to 10 minutes. That really sucked. Okay, what can you do to make the process simpler for you, right? Threats. What challenges could they pose to your show or audience growth? Some things that you're seeing, what they're doing that could stunt what you're doing, not necessarily that you're competing with them or you're thinking about them threatening you, but what threats do you see that they pose for your actual audience and for your growth, right? So again, this is really short. This is a bird's eye view of a marketing plan. There's people that go to school for this type of stuff, and you can sit with them and they can coach you for hours and hours and hours on this. But is that really where you want to spend your time, right? You've done all the work up to this point. I don't want you spending a whole bunch of time. Just go listen to your favorite podcast, write this stuff down, journal it, do whatever you have to do. Don't take this stuff so serious. I don't want you to delay your podcast because you haven't created a SWOT. Okay. So again, this isn't about copying your competitors. It's you seeing what's working, you seeing what's missing, you using the knowledge to strengthen your own position as a podcaster. That's what this is about. I don't want you coming out sounding like Joe Rogan or sounding like any of your favorite podcasters. I want you to come out sounding like you, but you knowing what you're up against when it comes to your competitors. And your competitors won't be Joe Rogan. That's not who you're competing against. You're competing against people that are where you're at. Joe Rogan's podcast has millions and millions of subscribers. I definitely don't want you to set that bar high for you, but you definitely could see some stuff that he's doing wrong, some stuff that he's doing right, and take away from that. Joe Rogan by no means is the bar, is the standard. Definitely look at some podcasts that make sense. I mean, he's had a lot of success with luck. He's had a lot of success with being ahead of the game. He's had a lot of success because he's been very freaking consistent and he speaks to his audience. And there's a lot of downfalls. And I'm not going to go into those right now. I was about to, but I'm not. Okay. So the next section, brand identity. I want you to define your podcast's brand identity. This includes some visual elements, some tone of voice, right? It's not just like what they're seeing is what they're hearing, is how their brand makes you feel. With my own personal brand, I want people to walk away from me feeling very inspired. I want people to walk away from me feeling like they could run through a brick wall if they need to. And that's my brand, because that's what I needed. I needed to feel that growing up. I needed to feel that as an employee in corporate, as an executive. I needed to feel that as an entrepreneur, that I can walk through those brick walls if I needed to. So those are the people that I'm talking to. And your brand isn't just your colors or the things that you're saying. Your brand, again, is how you make people feel. If you call my phone, there's a message there where my hope is to inspire people so that they can really see what's around them. I recorded that in a moment to where I needed to hear that message, right? That's my brand. And there's some people right now, even my sister called me the other day. She was like, oh, hang up. I didn't really want to talk to you. I just wanted to hear your voicemail. Wow. She called so that can make her feel good. That's my brand, right? Marketing channels. You're going to determine. Oh, let me go back to that. Sorry. So brainstorm right here. If you need to, I'm going to make some more lines because I feel like you need some more lines. Based off of what I said, and if what I said resonated with you, by all means, go with that. But go based off of what you feel that your people need to feel when they run across your brand. So do some brainstorming here. Again, this stuff it's not in stone. I don't want you to take a lot of time on this. This is just you brainstorming. Marketing channels. I want you to determine which marketing channels you'll utilize to promote your podcast. You're going to list the marketing channels you plan to use, such as social media, email marketing, your website, and podcast directories. Consider where your audience is most active and how you can effectively reach them. If your folks are on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, then that's where you're going to put. If you got an amazing email, you got a list already with contacts, I'm always going to tell you that email marketing is going to be the best, because that's where, if you have a podcast, you're going to get listeners, and you have some products or services. That's where you can infuse that into that, right? With that email marketing, you showing up, you giving those people value every single week, letting them hear your podcast and leading with what pain point you can help them with. If you have a website where people are going to already, that's another channel. I don't think that you should just build a website and just let it sit. The website should be a good landing page for you, where you're drawing people to the website. And then the podcast directories, that's pretty much, we're going to set that up and another module to where all you have to do is just go to the podcast directory and it'll automatically go to all those different spots. All right. So yeah, so what you'll do is you'll write that stuff in there, do some brainstorming, content strategy. You're going to develop a content creation distribution strategy. You're going to outline the types of content you will create and how often you'll publish them. Consider your audience's interests and preferences. All right. Notice I said your audience's interests and preferences and how you're going to create your content and publish it. So, one thing that I would be writing down here is you're going to use your podcast to create content. And then you were going to use whatever social media channel you have to promote that. And also you're going to use your email list to promote that. Family and friends, definitely you're going to promote that. I know I mentioned something about family and friends before. You just don't want that to be your only source of people that you're marketing to, because you could definitely lose some family and friends really quick. Keep marketing to them. But when it comes to you publishing your podcast and you marketing your podcast, you definitely want to be consistent in whatever strategy you choose. So how often are you going to produce that podcast? How often are you going to distribute it? I would say if you're just starting off, which most of the majority of people that is watching this, they're just starting off, I would tell you once a week. Unless you're starting a business, you have a business and you need some content, I would say maybe 10 pieces, 10 episodes, and then you let them sit static and you give it to people as a lead magnet or however you see fit as far as the content that you have that's matching their pain point. And there are some organizations that can afford to get away with that. But if you're a solopreneur, I would say you have a podcast, you should be producing a podcast every single week. And not just for the sake of producing a podcast every single week, but using that content, infusing the podcast inside of your business. That's what I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with, is not just building a podcast, but how can you put the podcast inside of your business? 90% of the revenue that I get come from the deals and different things that I do into podcasts. And you'll look at an episode that I'll take you behind the scenes with, and you'll kind of see how that work. And it is definitely not a mistake. It is not a coincidence that majority of the people that come on the show, either they need my services or there's some support that I need from them, or there's a way that we can collaborate. And that's how you schedule and that's how you run your show. It's supposed to be a business. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but what I want you to do is I want you to consider your audience interests, your audience preferences, what types of content you think that you're going to be making. Is it going to be solo? Is it going to be you with somebody else? Are you going to be, talking a little trash? Are you going to give people joy? What is it? Just brainstorm here. Don't overthink. That's been the theme, a reoccurring theme with the training here, is for you not to think it, overthink it. I want you to think it, but not overthink it. So here you're going to outline your approach to your social media marketing. You're going to specify which social media platforms you'll use and your posting frequency. This is a little bit redundant for a reason. So you're making your final decision. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to use LinkedIn, or I'm going to use Facebook. I'm going to post right here. I'm going to post every single week, because that's what Tony told me to do if I want to be serious about podcasting. Or you could say, I want to post every single month. If you just so busy and you only have something to say once a month, you can put that there. Content themes. What are going to be some stuff that you're going to be talking about? You could write even down here. What is some engagement strategies for me? One thing that I noticed has been really cool is I've been sending folks my email on my email list an opportunity to get into my public speaking course for free if they share my content, if they subscribe to the podcast, and I do it through this really cool app. If that's something that you're interested in, send me a message and say, hey, Tony, you were talking about this app that you use to get engagement. And hopefully, am I saying enough to where you would be able to draw my memory? The app is called King Sumo, and it's through App Sumo. But reach out to me, and I'll show you how to set that up. But it's so cool. I've been sending it to people on my list, and they freaking love it. But it gives them an opportunity to follow your Facebook, follow your Instagram, wherever you're doing, and also with your podcast, subscribe and leave a review to the podcast for them to have a chance to win whatever thing that you want to put up for them to win. So now what we're going to do is we're going to develop a basic SEO plan to help more people discover your podcast. Again, this by no means is going to be like a professional SEO plan. You could go and pay somebody to do that for you. But one thing that I've noticed when it comes to my podcast is using 3 to 5 keywords or phrases that are relevant to the topic, that are relevant to the audience, not just to the main podcast, but the actual topic, right? And we'll go through in a podcast episode and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. But you don't want to have words like leadership. If your podcast isn't about leadership, you don't want to have keywords that just absolutely have nothing to do. So with my podcast, my actual podcast, I do use words like leadership. I do use words like mental health because, those are the people that I want to come to and listen to the podcast. So if you have a podcast about knitting and sewing, you should be using those words: knitting, sewing, needles, crochet, whatever it is. But don't get too crazy with it and start just putting like random words and doing it over and over. You want it to be natural. You want it to appear in your title. You want it to appear in your description. You want it to appear in your show notes. And that'll really help you gain more visibility on Apple, Spotify, and also Google. And I've noticed it's helped my YouTube quite a bit. So I'm using words like public speaking, using words like podcasting, and there's people that want to learn about public speaking. There's people that want to learn about podcasting that are coming to my YouTube, which is really cool. So for this next one, what I want you to do is write down 3 to 5 keywords or phases. Right now, you're not thinking about episodes. You're thinking about just your podcast right now. So again, if I'm talking about my podcast, the podcast that we're creating here, Easy Podcast Blueprint, I would be beginner, podcaster. I would use words like what type of equipment do I need? Well, I would use words like creating a brand new podcast, or I'm stuck on what type of mic I would use. I think you get the point, right? So places you're going to use those keywords, you're going to place those keywords in podcast title, place those keywords in episode title. You're going to place those keywords in your show description. You're going to place those keywords in episode description and show notes. All right. So here again, I want you to use plain language. Don't use fancy jargon. You want to make it easy for the search engine so they can know exactly what your podcast is about, right? The simpler, the better. You should be writing all of this, writing and speaking in an 8th grade, is anywhere from like a 6th to 8th grade kind of terminology. That's the stuff that you want to use when you're writing. Anything else is freaking noise. All right. So listener engagement plan. You want to create a plan for engaging with your audience. I want you to think about some things. You could do Q&A sessions. That is one thing that I've done. That's what I'm doing right now. And that is how I get a lot of business. It didn't start out that way, but I wanted to figure out a way to engage my audience so that I can keep in constant contact with my audience, so I can know what they're doing, so I can learn all of these things that I'm telling you about. What are the pain points? What's really bothering them? What's keeping them up at night? What are some of the things that they're talking to their spouse about? late at night that's worrying them, right? So what I did was I put together some Q&A sessions for 2 to 3 years. I put together polls and I asked questions. You can go to my LinkedIn, go back to the last 3 years. Go back the last 3 years. You'll see that I'm asking questions. I'm doing polls constantly, trying to see what's really bothering people. So I would encourage you to do polls. I would encourage you to ask questions on social media. This will allow you to kind of step out of your comfort zone too. You can have contests, just like what I mentioned. I want you to respond to the comments and reviews so that you can have that community, so you can have that loyalty. That is one thing that I have been very intentional about these past few years, and even more these past couple months, is when somebody respond to it, to say something, not just take the information, but say something. And that is how you build community. I wish I could just, if I had the time to edit in my some of my DMs and some of my comments, you'll see the magic happening behind the scenes. And it is such a beautiful freaking thing when that happens behind the scenes like that. So we're not chasing we're not chasing engagement on social media. What we're chasing is impact. What we're chasing is being able to make a difference in our listeners' lives. That's what all of this is all about. And if you focus on being able to make a difference in their lives, that's when your bank account will be impacted. That's when your life will be impacted. That's when you'll be able to get some amazing mentors like I've been able to get to come on my podcast. And I mean, it's really shaped who I am as a businessman. It's really shaped who I am as a father. It's really shaped who I am as a friend. It's really shaped who I am as a human being with this podcast, right? So what you're going to do here is you are going to summarize your marketing plan and your next steps. You're going to review your marketing plan, everything that we talked about, some of the key points. And I want you to outline the next steps that you're going to take to execute these strategies properly. So what that could mean is all of this stuff that you wrote down, now it's time to freaking execute. Now it's time to put it together. Or, you know, maybe you wrote it down. You need to go through some more modules, go through and, refresh on some stuff, and you need to hold it for a bit, maybe meditate on what this stuff really means. Reach out to me, send me a message. I really want to know what it is that you're feeling stuck on so that I can get better in explaining this stuff. I get so freaking excited with talking about podcasting, and sometimes I really forget to talk about certain stuff because there's so much that go to my brain. I just want to give you freaking everything. If this is helping, please let me know. Send me a message. Say, hey, Tony, this is really helping me. I really appreciate that stuff. If you can share the fact that you're a student in the Easy Podcast Blueprint course to your network, that would make me freaking feel so happy. Again, congratulations. You've chosen your marketing plan, and I want to know how it makes you feel. You got any lingering questions? You can write them down here, and you can ask me your next Q&A session. Hopefully there's a link someplace around here. There's some place like in the homepage to where you could click to sign up to my next Q&A session. Those things are worth its weight in gold. If I had it my way, I would just hang out and just do those instead of just teaching on a topic, because I know there's some questions that you have that needs to be answered. So I am going to leave it at that. I think we're good. I think we can land this plane. Thank you again for paying attention, for hanging out with me this last almost 40 minutes talking about your marketing plan. Again, if there's any questions, I can't not stress that enough. Please feel free to reach out to me to see my thoughts on stuff. It's always good, and sometimes yours might be a little bit better, but it's always good to put two heads together to try to work through some of the challenges that you're having with this stuff. So I will see you in the next module, the next video. And until next time, my friends, bye-bye. And recording.